Good evening. It is it is April 27th, 2022. I am Malachi Elguera, your host. This is Rightward News. Tonight we're going to talk about Elon Musk purchasing Twitter. California wants to murder more babies. And we're going to wrap up this episode by talking about an op ed in CNN. Is it good to be fat? Let's jump into our first story. It's official. Twitter has agreed to be sold to Elon Musk for $44 billion. This has caused a major meltdown on the left. Elon Musk, he's the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. He's a popular user on the platform. He's well known for his memes and his just overall shenanigans on the platform. But he has been pretty open about his displeasure in how Twitter's run. He's expressed his disapproval for how the company censors the speech of users that they dislike and that they disagree with. He's been clear that he wants to ensure that he wants to protect free speech on the app, but on the left, where they seem swift to ban and censor voices they dislike, um, they've been just having the meltdown of the century. Let's pull up this article here. All right. So it's clear that even Twitter's leadership understands that employees are upset about the acquisition. I just lost my tab, didn't I? Let me get this back up here. Here we go. Yeah, so Twitter, they understand that their employees are pretty upset about this acquisition. And what's been funny is in order to prevent any employees from what they say going rogue and sabotaging the platform, Twitter has actually locked down its source code to prevent unauthorized changes. What this means is that currently a vice president must approve any changes. But I want to make a slight transition to a little bit of a lighter note as I change my screen. I actually had a story from the New York Post by journalist Andy No that I'm going to pull up. Let's see. Give me 1 second to pull this up. Let's see. It's New York Post. New York Post. Where are you? New York. I thought I had everything all ready to go. And of course, hey, I'm human. Let's see if I can find this. Okay, well, you'll have to just, I'll just have to go off script here. So, on a light note, I'm going to end with just a few quotes from some Twitter employees, as was published in the New York Post by journalist Andy No. Um, the first, actually, I've got to pull this. Let's see. Do I have the screenshots? I don't think so. So I'm just gonna read these off. Okay. So the first quote from a Twitter site reliability engineer who identifies as a non-binary, transgender, and plural person wrote, "They are," they wrote, and I quote, "physically cringy watching Elon talk about free speech." Okay. Um, Another front end engineer from Twitter named Connor Campbell, who also identifies as non binary. What is it with all the non binaries at Twitter? Anyways, Connor responded directly to Musk on Tuesday, defending Twitter's censorship of the New York Post when it reported on the Hunter Biden laptop story right before the 2020 election. Connor says, quote, Twitter had a policy about hacked documents. We applied this policy equally, end quote. Um, it turned out that the contents of the laptop were not hacked, as was confirmed by the Washington Post and the Times. All right, and last quote from Laura Gomez, who used to lead localization for Twitter. She tweeted, a Musk owned Twitter is one of the greatest threats to the 2022 and 2024 elections. We are effed if this happens. And there it is. They just tipped their hand and revealed what this is all truly about. They aren't here to protect free speech. What they want to do is manipulate elections. There was some stories after the Hunter Biden laptop story came out, and after it was censored on all of the social media platforms. There was some polls that showed that had that story actually been published, it could have affected the results of the election by upwards of 8% or something like that. So, transitioning to our next story. This next story comes from my home state of California. It's actually a story from Al Jazeera News, which I started going to recently because, especially around the time that the war between Ukraine and Russia picked up earlier this year, I found that it was really hard to get news that wasn't left biased. Even Fox News, um, they have their own biases, and so what I really wanted to do was get an outside perspective. So I started checking out some international outlets such as Al Jazeera and others. So in this story, in an extreme act of evil, activists are seeking to transform the state of California into an abortion sanctuary. Now, this is obviously in direct opposition to the US Supreme Court, which is expected to overturn Roe versus Wade later this summer, God willing. Planned Parenthood, their lobbying arm, they published a report which has prompted 13 bills that are currently pending in the California state legislature. It's this paper, this report that they call the future California's future of abortion council, the recommendations to protect, strengthen, and expand abortion care in California. This is just published December of last year. This should be called recommendations to murder more babies. Now, I didn't have this in my script, in my rundown, but there was one of the bills. I don't remember the exact bill number. It was in the news a couple weeks ago because the wording, which is really vague, suggested that they wanted to allow abortions, the murder of babies, up to 2 weeks after they were born. But I'm going to get back to my script. These bills, they're intended to make abortions more easily accessible to those both in and out of the state of California. This includes such proposals as using taxpayer dollars to pay for transportation, lodging, and the procedures themselves. Let's see if I can find one of these. What they want to do is they want to advocate for removing the restrictions. This is a quote, the restrictions on coverage of abortion later in pregnancy. This isn't this th- this is they're trying to turn abortion into a form of contraception. This isn't to help um, help women who have made mistakes and maybe were irresponsible. This is about this is about using murder to cover up for your lack of responsibility. So, anyways, so they're advocating for removing restrictions on late term abortions, forcing religious hospitals to perform abortions against their beliefs, offer protections for women who perform, this is disgusting, self induced abortions, and they want to remove any barriers for minors by not requiring parental consent for abortions. Now, this is one thing that I actually found pretty astounding that I didn't know currently existed. This report it says, oh, you know what? I just realized I'm not showing this to you guys. Silly me. So, although California does not require minors to obtain parental consent prior to receiving, they try to lighten it by calling it abortion care. Even though California doesn't requirement, the requirement still remains in statute. So even though it is law, California just chooses to not implement or uh, what's the word? They just don't enforce it. There we go. Even though the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional, um, they want California to remove any provisions from the law. What I say is, if God willing, the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, um, Planned Parenthood. Sorry, let me rewind. I was sort of getting ahead of myself. If God willing, the Supreme Court does overturn Roe versus Wade, this is one last thing I wanted to touch on before moving on to our last story. Where did I find this? Was it in this report? I think it was earlier on. This is pretty astounding as well. Here we go. And let me show you guys a little bit better. Planned Parenthood expects the number of out-of-state women flocking to California for abortions to rise from 46,000, which already seems insane, but they expect this number to increase from 46,000 to 1.4 million, which is an increase of 2,000. This is almost 3,000%. What I urge every person within the sound of my voice to do is to visit democracy.io and contact your congressperson to say no to all of these abortion related legislations. Yeah, this is just mind blowing. I can't believe that I live in this state that wants to use my tax dollars for such evil. But I want to try and end on a light note, and that is a pun that is absolutely intended. And this op-ed from CNN, there, if you can call her a journalist, she writes, "We need to stop complimenting weight loss, as it is unintentionally exacerbating or affirming the thin ideal that our society tends to emphasize and idolize." Um, this is actually making me laugh out loud. Um, she interviewed a an assistant professor of public health. This guy isn't even an actual professor; he's just an assistant. He should be called the assistant to the professor. Um, this Dwight Schrute here at the University of New Haven in Connecticut says we have people in large bodies that are in a state of malnourishment, as well as people in extremely low size that are malnourished. Well, yeah, of course. But just because people are malnourished doesn't mean that you shouldn't care for yourself and be fat. What's again, I'm so sorry about not showing you this article. Oh my gosh. This is the Dwight Schrute here, Alvin Tran, the assistant to the professor of public health. Um, yeah, so this is CNN. After the broadcast, I'll make sure these links are in the description, all resources available. I want you to feel confident that you are getting accurate news and that I'm not just blowing smoke up your bum. But here's the deal. The leftists, the globalist elites want us to be fat, dripping with unnecessary vaccines, eating bugs, sucking at the government teat. They want to kill your babies, and if you don't kill them, they want to indoctrinate them, remove their God given identity, and make them slaves of the state. I say resist. Fight for what is right. Fight for personal responsibility. Fight for godliness. And ultimately, I urge you, each and every one of you, pray that God's kingdom will come, not just in America, but every corner of this planet. So, this has been another episode of Rightward News. If you enjoyed this stream, go ahead and tickle the like button down there. Share this with someone who needs a quick news update that's honest, factual, and to the point. And lastly, leave a comment below. What I'd really like to see is some interaction. I want to get to know the people that are watching. I want to hear from you. I want to have your input in the broadcast. Share what you'd like to see. If you want to see more commentary, you want to see more interviews, maybe some less fluff, comment down below. Uh, During the live stream, reach out. Um, because we want this to be a fun interactive experience. So I just want to end with this. I'm going to start some music here. I just want to say, when life leaves you a little confused, continue rightward. God bless America.